Just saying.
Hello, Crystal. Marlise from the Alternative Board, and we're talking to Crystal from Pittwater and Northern Beaches today, up in Sydney. And Crystal, why don't you introduce yourself to us and give us a bit more about your background and the topic we're going to talk about?
Sure. Hello, Marlise. How are you?
Oh, well, thanks. And you?
That's good. Yeah, I'm good too. So a little bit about me is I've probably been in business for most of my life. I've been in lots of different industries. So sort of started out in service stations, convenience stores with my dad, ended up having 4 of my own at one time, ended up working in the head office of Caltex and was a buyer, national manager there for probably 10 years. And then sort of came out of that and went back into smaller business. We had a handyman business. Then I had an admin and bookkeeping business for a few years that I sold. And now I'm in with the Alternative Board, which I really love. And it's really nice working with other businesses. And I really love business. So it's nice being around businesses.
And it ties great into today's topic that you want to talk about. And that would be how systems and processes can help you with time management and also team profitability.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The second part of that would be
yeah, sorry, and the second part?
The second part would be then also how appointing an admin and a virtual assistant help in that process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're quite 2 different topics, but they're actually quite related as well, aren't they? So I guess that the topic, having good systems for time management and profitability is, I guess every good business has that, right? So it's, the ones that are very, very successful have really got this, really nailed it. They know exactly, they've got a great system, they use it well, everybody knows what they're doing. Whereas when you sort of building to get to be a great business, sometimes you tend to start off with not much, and then you can kind of add in little bits or that, and then it becomes quite clunky. So for me, it's just noticing that across a lot of different businesses and just how much having a really good system works. So a good example for me is that I had a client who has a service business, and what they do, he came to me and they had very, very poor cash flow and very little profits in the business. And yet he was, it's that typical saying, I'm working such long hours, I've got such good clients, I don't understand why I'm not making any money. And I don't know where the cash is, so, and then when we worked it out, he actually had a system. He was using Monday, but what ended up happening was that he wasn't using Monday efficiently. So what we did was we had to really pull it apart. We had to work out. One of the things people miss is that they think their teams are really busy, but if you don't have strong KPIs that match your profit goals or your KPIs to get your profit, it's very hard to know whether they're actually achieving that for you or not. So we ended up going, like I said, how do you know which staff are more efficient than the others? Are some working slower than the others? Are some, are some of them good at what they do, or are they using up all the time on one section of the job or the project that they're doing? So he really had no insight into that. So what we did was we built the system up around working out per project how many hours was budgeted for the project. And then we added little bits in about, the staff then had to track their time. They would work across multiple projects in a week. And so they would then allocate their time to the different projects in Monday and on their timesheets. So then he could then correlate the two. And there was a huge discrepancy. There was probably, instead of getting, 7 or 8 billable hours a day out of these people, he was probably getting a maximum of 5. So there was a lot of duplication, a lot of, I guess, just mucking around. They didn't know any better. He didn't know any better. So it was just tightening that and then getting these really strong KPIs around it. And that made a huge difference to his business and getting it right. So now his business is super profitable. We turned it around within 12 months and getting the systems right. And his staff know what they do. We recently had an area that he called admin, and so the staff could, if they had to restart a computer or a team meeting or something, they would have to put it down in admin, and he wasn't checking the admin to put on the invoices. So he got a huge fright the other day. He'd forgotten about that, and but I mean, there wasn't too much in there. We caught it quite early, but that's how good. When you've got a good system, you can then work out little things, and he's probably just added another $5,000 onto his profits, so just by doing that.
Crystal, that's a great example. But if you're a person that's, say you've started out a bit and you're getting now more business, and how would the person know? How would they identify a business process? How would they know which is the and how would they know how to prioritize that, if I may ask that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess the majority of people that sort of don't have a system, or sort of don't know that they need a system, often they don't even think they need one initially. They often forget things. They start to forget things because it's all in their head. It's in a diary, but mainly a lot of it's in their head, or they're using their emails as a to-do list. They could also be sort of scheduling things in their calendar, but they're not going to their calendar. But I think it's mainly, when you wake up at 2:00 in the morning and you go, oh, I forgot to ring that person back, or, oh no, that lead I got on Monday, I haven't rung them yet, and things like that. So that is when you know that you need to have a system or somewhere that you could put all your information into one place. And, we're so lucky to be living in a world of cloud programs now. In the old days, you didn't have that, right? So you used to have whiteboards and folders and God knows what else, but you didn't have that, right? And you remember those big things we used to have on the desk, and we used to, like the old bankers used to have, and everything was written on there, what you had to do.
I think it was called a desktop.
Yeah, something like that. But now we've got all these cloud-based systems, but because there's so many of them out there, it's actually very confusing and very difficult. So often people will start 2 or 3 and they don't actually match what they need, or they don't understand it, or things like that. But I think the main one is that it's their staff. They're kind of not knowing where their staff aren't doing everything they want. And they're forgetting things, or they're waking up in the middle of the night thinking that, damn, I forgot that. So when you start forgetting things, or starting to send yourself emails to remind yourself, that's when you know you need a system.
So then that would then also be a good look at task, I guess, that's repetitive, and things that you do every day, and like off. Whatever that role is, that, say you've got an employee, what is in the daily role of that person? What does he do? And so then how I guess that would be similar to that then.
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be one part of it. I guess what a system does for you, or a good system will do for you, is, depending on the style of business that you've got, but let's take a trade business, for example, or a cleaning business, or a business where you're dealing lots with clients, right? Or you're visiting clients. So you would need what they call a job management system, not a customer relationship management system.
Oh, good.
You don't need a CRM, you need a JRM, a JMS, right? A job management system, all these acronyms. And what happens there is that all your work is in one place, right? So it's all in the cloud. Everybody can access it. You can access it from your phone, from your computer. You don't have to be in an office to do it. You could be on the road to do it. And what it is that you can then have, they have what they call different statuses. So instead of going by a customer, you actually have a job for every job that you're going to go and do. So if you say you're a window cleaner and you've got 10 jobs in that day to go and do, every job will have a number, and you would schedule that job. And then when that job's finished, you would then put it in a tab, or a status, as they call it, to invoice, right? And then you could have an admin person invoicing that, or when you get home, you could invoice that. And so you've got everything in the one place. You can have all your leads in one place as well. So if they ring you on the road, you would just add them in at the top in a section, and then you don't forget anything, and it's all there. And then you would have your staff have access to that, so you could capture what they do during the day, their timesheets, any materials or stuff you had to buy to do the job. You could enter it in there at the same time as well. So you actually have one place that's a source of truth for everything. A lot of people try and make Xero, their accounting system, do that, which is it's a very basic system to do that. But the Xeros and the QuickBooks of the world are really geared for accounting and for capturing your tax and paying your BAS and wages. They're not really a job management system. You can't schedule out of there. You could quote an invoice, but that's about it. And you can't put your leads in there. There's no notes, there's no photos, all that sort of stuff. And often people will get confused that maybe the Xeros of the world could be the system that they need. It's one of the systems that you need. You might need 2 or 3 systems to make it work for your business.
Oh, no, that's good. And I guess in the bigger companies, they make use of an ERP system.
Yes.
Where everything is integrated, but a lot of smaller businesses might not have the need yet for such a system.
I think every business has a need for a system, Marlise. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. It just organizes you, doesn't it? So
I think so.
Yeah. And those ERP systems are really amazing, but they are really geared up for much bigger companies, and they cost a lot of money too, and you need a lot of resources to maintain them. But we live in a world today where these out of the box systems are honestly just so amazing and can just do and a lot of these bigger companies are actually moving off the ERPs and actually moving into these smaller systems because they are so good. And a lot of them are starting to get a lot of AI into them as well. So a lot of little tasks can be easily, like with Zapier, and that you can have little things that are easily automated that takes a minor task or something that people might forget to do. So,
Crystal, that talking about automation, how does that relate to having a good system, and where would you typically use the automation, and when would you consider automating a process?
Well, I guess the alternative board's a good one. So we would get a lead in from Facebook or something like that. It would automatically go into a like a spreadsheet sort of system, a CRM system. And then you would then have AI automation that would then send us a text to say that there's a lead that's coming, plus it would then enter it into our CRM ready to go. And that's all without a human touching it. So, and it's just with a very simple little thing. Yeah, it's so easy. And there's so many little things that you can do to automate those little things, and not that expensive at all. So,
no, that's good.
Knowing about them, isn't it? That's the hard part, I think, is how do you know about this stuff? That's, which is, it's a bit of an education, isn't it?
Myself having a corporate background and being having the luxury of having all these people and systems, and it's a lot of people that make a system work and processes identified, and it's much easier. When it comes to smaller businesses, it's not so, you don't have the luxury of the people and the knowledge, so sometimes you have to buy all these things. And if you have a system that's easy to manipulate and help you, I think that's a bonus, and especially not everybody has that strength of knowing about systems and processes and how to identify them. So, and I think coming back to the time and the priorities, what would you recommend someone to look first at if they're considering the system implementation? What part would be the best to prioritize in the business to get it right?
So from a time perspective, the biggest, I guess, barrier to doing these systems is often, I don't have the time, I'm too busy. And so, let's face it, there's never a good time to implement these things. You just got to bite the bullet and do it. And yes, it's going to be a whole lot of extra hours you've got to find in the day to set it up and to get it right and to learn it and everything. However, once you get that right, imagine I would say on average, you would get back to at least 2 hours a day if you were using multiple spreadsheets, or you were using a paper diary, or just keeping it all in your head. I would say you would get a minimum of 2 hours a day back by having implementing a very basic job management system or a CRM system for your business. And then you've got everything in one place. But like all systems, right? If it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you get to do it, you got to do it right from the get-go. There's no I'll half use it, or I'll partly use it, or anything like that. It has to be 100% commitment. And I think that would probably be one of the biggest barriers of entry, isn't it? To find the time, number one, to do it, and then to have that commitment to make the time to use it properly.
And I think you mentioned team profitability. I just wanted to touch base with you on that. How did you, in your example that you mentioned, how did these team members find that having that systems? How did they initially feel having this to implement the system? And in the end, afterwards, how did they feel about it being implemented and they've been working with it for a while? What was their transition like?
I think that the staff, once you've got the system and you show them how to do it, the staff, some would forget to do it or whatever, but you as a boss or a manager, you would have to have your weekly meetings, go through what's working, what's not working. You would have to check that everybody's doing it right, every day and stuff. But you would just pick a day, Monday, we're now using this new system, full stop. And I think, within a week or two, that just becomes the new habit, isn't it? And then people forget that they even were using other systems and that. So, and I think with the example that I gave in his business, a lot of the stuff, there was actually 2 staff members he had to remove out of the business. They were just that inefficient. And were costing him probably most of his profit. So he had to remove them and re-employ one really efficient person into the business. And I think that made a really big difference. But the other ones are now getting better. It's not a perfect thing in the first few months, but it's got really good now. And the staff really like it. They understand that the business has to be profitable as well. And they also now understand that the time, their time has to be billed. Otherwise, how do you have a business where you can't bill for people's time?
That's true.
You know what I mean? It sounds, a lot of staff sort of say, I just want a job, profit isn't that important to me. But if there's no profit, there's no company or business for you to work in. So it's really important.
I was just thinking that do they each now have a KPI that assigned to them on the projects that they're working on?
Yes. So their KPIs are, for example, like that particular project that the section of that project that they're working on, for instance, might only have 4 hours allocated to that time, so budgeted. So they know that they can only do it in 4 hours. If there's a variation in the work or there's some other complication or something, then that must be a flag that gets brought up, and so that there could be a variation, and that person can then go speak to the client and say, hey, we found something in here. We're going to have to make a change to this, or how do you want this to go? Or perhaps the client has said, oh, look, I want to make a change in this. If they make a big change, before they would just accept it and go with it, but actually it was an overrun on the project. And so those customers were not getting variations or additional invoices. It was all absorbed. So they were getting massive value, but the business was really hemorrhaging profits. So it's very important to have those KPIs. How much time are you allocating and how fast do you think people can do it in that time? It's billable hours versus actual hours. And that's, for most businesses, that's your number one KPI.
Well, that's good to know, Crystal.
In factories, it's the same thing, isn't it? You know, it's output of how fast can the factory make these things, and how many people do you need to make them, and how more efficient can we make it? You know, so that the whole thing gets a little cheaper or more. There's a certain price that you can't do it for, right? So it's no different. But a lot of people miss that, I think, in business.
And it seems like a continuous improvement process. Once you start it, you can always improve on what you've got and stay ahead of, learn more about the same process and improvements.
Yeah, and so with that particular client, it's been really interesting after a year of working on this. I mean, we found that admin thing a week or so ago, and we just went, oh, wow. But if we hadn't had all these continuous improvements, we would never have found that. It was never going to be highlighted. The other thing that we added in there was that how fast are they getting back to the clients? So it's that continuous communication to clients as well. And we've worked out in that that there was often a 3-week lag between the communications of what was going on with what they were working on. And, you know, in real life, if you have 3 weeks, you'll be thinking, the client will be thinking, and they were, you know, what the hell's going on? I haven't heard from them lately, you know, whereas they were waiting on other information, or they were waiting for another person to finish something. So now they've implemented a section in their Monday that where how often are they communicating with clients, and they're actually tracking it. So he would like them to communicate with the clients, but we would never have got there if we hadn't done those continual improvements. And we're still improving, you know. So are we there yet? No, but are we, you know, 100 steps forward? Hell yes. And the business is making money, so it's showing.
So tell me a bit more about a good admin or a virtual assistant. How would that help the team or a business?
I reckon there are a certain amount of tasks that every business has that's repetitive, isn't it? So and they just things that keep the business ticking over. So for instance, you know, it's putting new clients or leads into a system so that you could send them the nurture feed or a drip feed. Who does that? You know, is it done consistently? That is a perfect job for an admin or a virtual VA. You could, you know, setting up the jobs in the job management system as they come in. So you might get an email saying, hey, I want my windows washed on next Monday. All they would do is get that email, set it up in the job, send them an acknowledgement. Hey, thanks for the work. You know, we have scheduled you in next week, or whatever it is. You know, that's just repetitive, and you can get those answered really fast and quickly and efficiently. And that's another like great task for it. So there are numerous tasks like that. They can schedule work for you. They could write the tender or the quote up for you. They could ring up the clients and follow up on outstanding, you know, quotes or tenders. They could ring up for outstanding monies. They could do follow-ups for feedback from clients. They could data input, so all the purchases that were made, they can data input that for them. I mean, the list is, they can ring up the staff and, you know, schedule all their holidays that they want for the next year. That can be all put in. They can, you know, there's so many. If you think about having, I always think of an admin or a virtual VA could be like your wingman a little bit in your thing. Social media, marketing. I mean, they could do all of that, you know. There's just so many little things that they could do. And the best thing that I do before you put an admin on is you would break down all the tasks that you do, and that's in the business. And then you would just circle which ones you think are repetitive. And you could, you know, and then you work out which ones you want. So you could start off with 1 day a week, you know, and then you would add another day a week, and then you would add, and you build that relationship with them and that trust, you know. I just think every business, you need them.
And I don't want to go into the pros and cons. I think you've touched on that. what would you, if we have to, we're going to close down now, what would you recommend? The number one recommendation, what would you recommend business owners or business people look at? What would be a key takeaway for them to consider in terms of processes, systems, and team profitability? What would be your number one tip be towards them?
Oh gosh, what's the number one tip? I would say that you need to talk to someone that can help you to review your business, to review where you're at, and then sort of suggest a few things for you. I think that would be really good. Most business owners know when it's not working well anymore. And I think that would be when you feel like it's not as streamlined or it's a little clunky and you're forgetting things, I would say reach out, speak to people around you, speak to people who are in your industry. What systems are you using? Everybody's using something nowadays. So what are they using? Do they find it good? And you'll get a lot of interesting feedback just by asking and talking to your peers as well. I think that would be a really good place to start.
Thank you, Crystal. That is valuable. And yeah, and thank you.
What was your key takeout out of all of that?
I think where it's breaking down looking at your business and breaking it down into sectors. Where's your what activities do you relate to your sales incomes? What ones go under your operational management and admin, and like your back office support, and then how do I get my money in? That part is the billing of the invoices and those type of things. And also, how do I give feedback to my customers? So there's, to me, those are the four main areas: is the communication back to your customer, among the peers and the people in your team, and the management up and down, the communication within. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, the various activities that you can easily either outsource to another person or an admin, get someone to do that. Just to identify those things. I think that those are key takeaways from what you've touched on.
Another key takeaway too is a lot of people put on admin or VAs, but don't actually have a system for them. And then it often fails because the admin person or the VA don't know what they are meant to be doing. So you can't say, oh, I just want all the marketing done, but then you may not have a system. So then they will apply their knowledge as to what system you should use or some process that they use, and you don't know what they're doing. So then you go, oh, but that's not the result I wanted. And then it gets very confusing, and that's a whole communication problem, right? So it's often the systems come first, and then the admin comes once you've got that sorted. Because then you tell them what you want done in your business, and they shouldn't be telling you how it should be done in your business. Does that make sense? So that's often the issue, right? And that's why it often fails. Or they spend all this money on an admin person, they got no idea what they do. And that it shouldn't be like that, right?
No, so, it's like sometimes.
You've got to know you got to know what everybody's doing in your business. So you need to know that. So yeah, so interesting point. Yeah, good comments, Marlise. Loved it. Yeah, really good chatting. We should do this again for sure.
I think so. But Crystal, I think thumbs up, and it was lovely speaking to you, and looking forward to our next topic.
I love it, Marlise. Bring it on. And we'll speak to you soon. See you, everyone.
See you. Bye.